table with him heard this, he said to Jesus, "Blessed is the one who will eat at the feast in the kingdom of God." Jesus replied, "A certain man was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests. At the time of the banquet, he sent his servant to tell those who had been invited, 'Come, for everything is now ready.' But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said, 'I've just bought a field and I must go and see it. Please excuse me.' Another said, 'I've just bought 5 yoke of oxen and I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me.' Still another said, 'I've just got married, so I can't come.' The servant came back and reported this to his master. Then the owner of the house became angry and ordered his servant, 'Go out quickly into the streets and the alleys of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind and the lame.' 'Sir,' the servant said, 'what you ordered has been done, but there is still room.' Then the master told his servant, 'Go out to the roads and country lanes and compel them to come in, so that my house will be full. I tell you, not one of those who were invited will get a taste of my banquet.'" This is the word of the Lord.
Thank you so much for leading us into that part of the service, the remembrance service, very poignant. And least we not forget. And it was so encouraging, actually, because little Caleb was sitting on Abigail's lap, and he was just playing with the poppy and saying, "Poppy, poppy," at such a young age. And that's what it's about, isn't it? We teach each other to remember. Anyway, let's get into the parable that we are looking at this morning, the parable of the Great Supper. Last week we looked at the barren fig tree. I asked someone what it was this morning as I came in, and I couldn't remember which parable I spoke on last week, and I wasn't ashamed, but it just did actually make me think. I wonder how much we remember. So anyway, let's dive into this parable of the Great Supper that we find in Luke 14, verses 15 to 22. Imagine this. You've arranged a party. You've sent out invitations. You prepared this amazing feast with the most lavish food, wine, the best wine. You've laid the table with the best china that you've had for years. And as you're preparing this, the aroma of the food is just a delight. And you're buzzing with excitement. And then day arrives. And guess what? No one turns up. Wow. How would you feel? What would you be thinking? Maybe you'd be disappointed. Maybe you would feel hurt. Maybe you will be angry. Let's kick it up a notch, shall we? What if it wasn't just a party, it was the most important event in your life? You've been planning it for years, investing everything that you have, everything that you are into this grand party. Suddenly the stakes are a bit higher, aren't they? And when you think about it, this story cuts to the heart of how people respond to God's call. It's as simple as that. You see, this is the most important invitation that people will ever receive. And guess what? We've all been invited. People in this room, people that may be watching online. See, this is not just a simple story. This story is a profound revelation of God's purpose to come and to save us. You see, the story goes, isn't it, is that this man has a party, a great banquet, and he invites all his guests. It's a celebration above celebrations. I wonder if you've been to a celebration that has surpassed all of your expectations. It may be a wedding that you've been to and you thought, wow, they have put so much into this. The detail was incredible. The table was set immaculately. The welcome was something that you've never, ever experienced before. And then the food comes. And it is just the best food that you've ever tasted. The generosity is flowing through the entertainment and the welcome and the wine and the food. And, wow, it's something that you've never experienced before. Let's multiply that by tenfold. Because that's what heaven is going to be like. The image that Jesus portrays points and paints a picture of heaven. The extravagance. You see, when you think about it, this meal should show us God's nature. And that nature is love. He wants the best for us, doesn't he? He has the best waiting for us. See, it paints a picture of what God is preparing for us. The abundance of God's kingdom. And it points to heaven. It points to what awaits us in heaven. But what makes this parable truly remarkable is the nature of the invitations that he sends out. Isn't it? Because the host doesn't just send out a formal invitation in a letter like you might get through the post, or an email that you might get nowadays, or WhatsApp, or even a funny GIF. He goes one step further, because when everything is ready, he says, come, doesn't he? Everything is ready. See, the invitation doesn't just go out to the VIPs either, does it? It goes out to everybody. He casts the net wide, doesn't he? It's not just to the people he likes, who he gets on with. It is everybody. It mirrors God's heart, doesn't it? That he wants everybody to be at the celebration in heaven. You see, he wants all people to be saved. He wants all people to come. And this shows, doesn't it, that he loves everyone. And as this invitation goes out, he is persistent, isn't he, in inviting people, because he sends his servant out and says, come, come, everything is ready. Everything is ready. Which tells us that this party, this celebration, this kingdom of God is not a distant promise. It's not something in the future. It is now. You see, our future at the celebration is now. The table is set for us to accept now. And God desires us to be there in his presence. Like a loving father, he actively pursues the relationship with us, reaching out again and again. See, that invitation was just not formal, it was personal, because he sent out his servant. He actively pursues the relationship with us, reaching out again and again, just like the servant went out and informed the people to come, everything is ready. But for us nowadays, that invitation can come in countless ways, can't it? It can come through a passionate testimony of someone who's been transformed by God's love. The invitation to come could be through a sermon that speaks directly to the heart of someone. The invitation to come to the celebration could even be when you're gazing out to the sunset and you see creation. You see the leaves on the floor in this autumn time. You see the sun beaming at you in the summertime. You see the sparkle of the winter snow or the freshness of the rain that falls. Or the invitation could come through moments of crisis, when you realize you need something, and that someone is greater than yourself. See, this isn't just a historical story, but it is a living invitation for us to come to Jesus. He reaches out continuously to his creation. He wants everybody to come to the party. And you know, we are the servants of the host. And he told the servant to go out and tell. So what does that mean for us? He tells us, doesn't he? Go and invite. Compel. Come. Everything is ready for the party. And then, as we get down further into this parable, verses 18 to 20, we see something, don't we? What do we see? The excuses begin. The excuses begin. I've just bought a field and I must go and see it. Please excuse me. Another said, I've just bought 5 ox. I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me. I've just got married, so I can't come. The excuses begin. Yes, the first one claims that he has bought some oxen. And you'd think that's reasonable, not the oxen, a field. Yeah, you'd think that's reasonable, wouldn't you? I mean, I've just bought something, so therefore I'm going to go and see it. Doesn't indicate that he actually saw the film before he bought it. A bit like Homes Under the Hammer, if you ever watched that. His excuse really reveals, doesn't it, that he's prioritised his possessions, doesn't it? Over the relationship and the experience of God. You might as well say that he bought a house and I need to check it out. But can't that wait? Surely. Surely. You see, the property is more important than attending the once-in-a-lifetime celebration. The second guest, he buys his oxen. Seems logical as well, doesn't it? I can't come because I've got to go and see the oxen and see how they're performing. But surely it can wait till another day. I mean, it doesn't have to work, really, does it? I mean, you're invited to the best party ever. Celebration above all celebrations. Really? You want to work? Well, sometimes, when you think about it nowadays, he's putting his financial interest ahead of the greatest invitation to a party ever. Sometimes, when you think about it in modern day language, perhaps he's putting work above everything else. And because if he works, he gets financial gain. So perhaps he's kind of like looking at what financial benefits that working can give rather than going to a party. But you know what? This party had been planned. He had the invitation before. But he made up an excuse after that. Surely scheduling of work is far more better for him than going to the party. He prioritises, doesn't he, financial gain over relationship and spiritual matters in his life. Now, we get to the third one. The person's just got married. Well, let's face it, that seems, doesn't it, the most valid reason not to go to the party. However, and this is challenging for a lot of us here. You see, what this is saying is that he puts his personal relationship above a relationship with God. Now, the wedding is a wedding, but if you break it down, it could be just relationships, family. Family obligations is more important than a relationship with God. That is challenging, isn't it? But how many stories do we hear about other people of other faiths, mainly Muslims, that have found Jesus and they've had to turn away from that, and their families have ostracized them and even threatened to kill them? You see, these people that have found the invitation and have accepted the invitation and have gone to the party have put God above their relationships. Don't get me wrong, all of this is important. Professions are important, work is important, family is important, but there has to come a time when the rubber hits the road and we might have to choose between those. What will you choose? Because surely our relationship with God is more important. Tough. And why is that? Why? Maybe it's just because we focus, don't we? People focus on the immediate, the tangible, the things that we think are going to last forever, and they don't, do they? They're more concerned about the here and now than what lies ahead. The hopes and dreams that we put in our professions and our work, and even sometimes our families, will eventually pass. But the things of heaven, the things of God that we choose to accept and to live out in our lives will last for eternity. And we see this so poignantly in those verses where each guest responds with the little word. In fact, it's not even a word. It's a letter. And that letter is I must. I have to. See, we are in a danger, and the world is full of this self-imposed obligation to justify ourselves, and even justifying why we cannot be invited to God's kingdom. We read these excuses, and we need to ask ourselves, and the people that we tell about Jesus, what excuses do you allow? What excuses do we allow to come between me, us, you, and God's invitation? Is it the fields? Is it the oxen? Or is it the relationships? You see, sometimes we make mistakes, and sometimes we forget. But I'd like to say this, that God's invitation is there for all, now and forevermore. Just like the invitation went out by the host, the servant went out. Which tells us something, doesn't it? That God has not forgotten us. Whether or not we forget the invitation, he will always send someone around us to tell us once more about the invitation. And this is quite an interesting point as we travel through this, is that the response of the host, it first seems that he's become angry, and he does become angry, and it's not out of pettiness or vengefulness, it's because he wants people to come and know him and have a relationship with him. He desires people to come. And the second one is that instead of cancelling the feast like most people would, he goes out, doesn't he, and invites many, many different guests in verse 21 to 23. The poor, the disabled, the outsider. Even when the servant comes back and says there's still room, he says, we'll go out to the highways and to the hedges and invite anybody that you can, anybody that would listen, and compel them to come in. Our circles are not that small. They are massive. In fact, they are as big as the world. The hedges and the highways. As I said, this isn't about punishment. This isn't about God getting angry with us at all. It's not. It's about, funny enough, that it's about our choices. You see, it's a natural choice. And we decide, don't we? I must. I have to. You see, our choices will make a difference to our salvation and what is in store for us in heaven. And sometimes as we read these parables, we are convicted and challenged because they have serious consequences for us. If we reject God's invitation to come into his kingdom, then we are making an eternal choice. And our choice has an eternal implication. You see, the feast still took place, regardless of those people that were intended to come did not. It shows us that God's plans are not hindered by human rejection on an individual level, because there is room at the table for everyone. No one is too far gone to be invited, by letter or by word. See, the good news is that there is still room at the table, and it is bountiful. God's generosity stands in stark contrast to anything down here. If you turn down the invitation, choosing to focus on your own concerns, how can you come into God's kingdom where God's bountifulness is waiting for you? The urgency of the invitation is for us to go out and to tell people. The urgency is for us, first and foremost, to accept that invitation and then go out. I think one of the things that struck me this week is that when you are invited, think very, very carefully, even if you have doubts. In this parable, I urge you to look at what you are missing and come to God when he invites you to come. So let us remember those excuses that we might make. Those things that are based on our own desires, and challenge them. Take quiet moments to reflect on what is keeping you from accepting God's call in your life as well. The invitation to the party doesn't stop at the party. God will call you, maybe to do something else that would allow people to come into the party. And think about what is stopping you accepting the call, the invitation. Because the invitation for us is an ongoing invitation to reevaluate what is important in our lives. Are we too preoccupied with the things of this world to recognize that the greater priority is to go out and compel others to come in? The feast is ready. The invitation have been sent out. Now is the time to respond to that invitation. for us and for us to compel others to come in. Amen.